Clara Dixon was a quiet and humble college student, working part-time at the McDonald's on Elmwood Avenue. She wasn't someone who sought attention or craved recognition. Clara preferred to live her life with humility, believing that actions spoke louder than words. She was known among her friends and co-workers for being kind-hearted, thoughtful, and incredibly intelligent, qualities that made her well-liked but never in the spotlight. It was on a seemingly ordinary Wednesday afternoon, a few weeks ago, when something extraordinary was about to happen. The lunch rush had just begun, and Clara was busy taking orders and serving meals when a man walked in. At first glance, he seemed like an average customer, but something about his presence caught her attention. It was Barron Trump. Clara recognized him immediately. He was the youngest son of former President Donald Trump, though he wasn't widely recognized in the public eye at the time. Barron, despite his famous last name, carried himself with a quiet, reserved demeanor. He seemed somewhat out of place in the bustling restaurant, his posture a little stiff, his gaze a bit distant, as if he didn't quite fit the casual, laid-back atmosphere of the fast food joint. He stepped up to the counter and placed his order with a calm and composed voice. But as he reached into his pocket to pay, Clara noticed a slight shift in his expression. A look of mild panic flashed across his face. He fumbled through his pockets, patting them frantically. His wallet was gone. He looked visibly distressed, clearly embarrassed by the situation. Clara, ever the thoughtful person, could see that he was in a bit of a bind. Without hesitating, she smiled warmly and quietly swiped her own debit card through the reader, paying for his meal without drawing any attention to herself. "Don't worry about it," she said, handing him the tray with a light-hearted smile. Barron stood there for a moment, caught off guard by her kindness. He had expected a confrontation, or perhaps the awkwardness of having to leave the restaurant, but Clara's effortless gesture of generosity put him at ease. He stared at her for a moment, and though he didn't say much, the look in his eyes spoke volumes. Gratitude, mixed with surprise and a bit of awe. He nodded, offering a quiet, "Thank you," before turning and walking to a table. Clara went back to her routine, never thinking much of the encounter. For her, it was just a simple act of kindness. Nothing more. What Clara didn't know was that this small, seemingly insignificant gesture was about to change the course of her life. The man she had helped was Barron Trump, the youngest son of one of the most famous figures in the world, Donald Trump. That day, Barron had decided to take a break from his usual entourage of security personnel, seeking a rare moment of normalcy and independence in a fast food restaurant. Little did he know that the kindness of a stranger would leave a lasting impression. Days turned into weeks, and Clara continued her work at McDonald's, blissfully unaware that her act of kindness had rippled far beyond the walls of the restaurant. Meanwhile, at Mar-a-Lago, the lavish estate in Palm Beach, Florida, Barron sat across from his father, Donald Trump. The conversation had drifted to the subject of the young woman at McDonald's. Barron couldn't help but recount the story. "She was so kind, Dad," he said with a hint of admiration in his voice. "I didn't have my wallet, and she just paid for my meal without making a big deal out of it. She didn't even want anything in return." Donald Trump listened attentively, his face thoughtful. Though he was a man of power and wealth, hearing his son speak so highly of this young woman struck a chord with him. It was a reminder of the importance of compassion, especially in a world where kindness often seemed scarce. "What's her name?" Trump asked, his curiosity piqued. "Clara," Barron answered. "Clara Dixon. She works at the McDonald's on Elmwood Avenue." Trump paused, considering this for a moment. He wasn't one to let acts of kindness go unnoticed, especially when they involved his family. A plan started to form in his mind. "We're going to pay her a visit," he declared, a determined look crossing his face. He wasn't going to let this small but significant act go unrecognized. "We'll make it a surprise," Trump instructed his team, "but it needs to be low-key. This is about her, not me." The details were swiftly arranged, and the date was set. When the day arrived, a convoy of sleek black SUVs pulled into the parking lot of the McDonald's on Elmwood Avenue. Clara was behind the counter, working hard during the busy lunch rush, unaware of the surprise awaiting her. The restaurant was buzzing with the usual lunchtime chatter when suddenly the atmosphere shifted. The chatter died down. The door swung open, and a hush fell over the room. Clara looked up in confusion. She froze as she saw who had just entered. There, standing in the doorway, was none other than Donald Trump himself, flanked by a group of security personnel. The room was still as people tried to process the sight of a former president walking into a small fast food restaurant. Is Clara Dixon here? Trump's voice boomed across the room, commanding yet surprisingly warm. His presence was undeniable, but his tone was inviting, almost like a friendly gesture to acknowledge her. Clara's heart raced. She hadn't expected anything like this, and for a moment, she was paralyzed with shock. Hesitantly, she stepped forward. Her apron still dusted with flour, she couldn't help but feel a bit self-conscious. "That's me," she said, her voice steady but with a slight tremor, betraying her surprise. Trump extended his hand toward her, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Clara?" he said warmly. "I've heard so much about you from my son, Baron. You did something truly special for him, and we're here today to thank you for it." At that moment, Baron, who had been standing behind his father, stepped forward. His shy smile was unmistakable. "I've never forgotten what you did for me," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "Thank you." Clara, overwhelmed, felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She stammered, trying to downplay the moment. "It was nothing, really. Just helping out," she said, feeling slightly embarrassed by the attention. But Trump shook his head, his expression firm. "It was not nothing," he said. "What you did was something special." He turned to one of his aides, who handed him a sleek envelope. "We want to make sure you have every opportunity to achieve your dreams," Trump continued, as he handed the envelope to Clara. Inside, Clara found a scholarship that would cover her remaining college expenses, along with a heartfelt note from Baron. The gesture left her speechless. As the room erupted into applause, Clara could feel tears welling up in her eyes. She never expected anything like this, let alone something so meaningful. "I don't know what to say," Clara whispered, still in shock. Trump chuckled lightly. "Just keep being the wonderful person you are," he said with a smile. "That's more than enough." As the convoy of SUVs pulled away from the McDonald's, Clara stood at the door, still clutching the envelope. The customers, who had witnessed the whole exchange, were abuzz with excitement and congratulations. It was a moment she would never forget. For Clara, the day was a powerful reminder. Even the smallest acts of kindness can have far-reaching consequences. That one simple gesture of helping someone in need had turned into an unforgettable experience, one that would change her life forever. And so, the story of Clara Dixon came to a close, but the impact of her kindness would ripple out in ways she never could have imagined. Thank you for reading the full story. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible tales. And remember, every small act of kindness can make a big difference.